right, thanks, Veronica. And for those of you who registered, I think before today, you got the file of these slides this morning. Is that correct, Veronica?
Yes, that is correct. And I am getting ready to post the PowerPoint presentation in the chat right now.
Yeah, because we did, I think Holly said we had a lot of people sign up this morning and just in the last hour. So if you didn't get the slides, we'll be posting those in the chat. And I think, yeah. Okay, so let's, thank you for moving the slides. Okay, so today's agenda got a big turnout today because we always draw a lot of folks when we talk about money. That seems to be the big drawer, so, or the big draw. So let's see, we're going to talk a little bit about the proposed budget, not too much, just give you the details. Talk about how the preliminary allocations will be released and the process driving us to the CFAD. And then a couple other items that we're going to talk about for coming up in 21-22. And then we'll go into the backbone of the NOVA system, talking about the expenditure requirements. And then I'll turn it over to Veronica and she'll do some demos. You know, we have a lot of new people on the call today, so we're going to kind of go through how to file those expenditure reports. I think I lost the agenda there. So how to file expenditure reports. Thank you. How to close out reports, how to use the forecasting tool, and then anything else you want to talk about regarding NOVA. And then with time, we'll open it up for questions and then talk about upcoming events. So next slide, please. So for the 21-22 governor's proposed budget, last year we had 538,564,000. The increase is 1.5, but when I did the calculation, I guess they rounded. And so if you were going to take this and use a 1.5, it wouldn't calculate. So it's really a 1.4999. And I guess those nines keep going out to get to the 8,078,000 proposed increase, which brings us to a total of 546,642,000 for 21-22. And so, of course, this is all subject to change as part of the May revise. Hopefully, they'll give us more, hopefully not less or any cutbacks. But the May revise is the time for them to make some adjustments based on economic forecasts and revenue and things like that. So if that happens, we would do a revised CFAD, and I'll go through that in just a little bit. So next slide, please. Okay, so here's how the process would work. Probably next week in the newsletter, we will release the preliminary allocations for 21-22 by consortia. And then that'll give you a chance between next week and the end of April to schedule your public meetings to decide on your allocations for each member. And then May 2nd is still the CFAD due date in NOVA. And the CFAD is the document that in the consortia, all the members, oh, can you go back there just a second? Thank you. The CFAD is the document in NOVA that helps us identify all the member allocations. Each member has to certify that, then it's certified by the consortia and submitted. And so we use that to create the disbursement schedules that we give to state controllers to send out the money to local districts and fiscal agents. So if we did get something, an adjustment in the May revise, we would give you additional time to submit a revised CFAD, and that would be due at the end of June. And so we've had that happen a couple of times and it's worked out. It just kind of delays things a little bit, but If we get additional funding, that would be good news. So let me pause there to see if there's any questions about the budget for 21-22 or the process to submit your allocations by member via the CFAD. And CFAD stands for Consortia Fiscal Administration Declaration, I believe. But we just say CFAD because that sounds a whole lot better. So let's see, any questions? I think there is one here. I'm going to go up from Andrew. You may want to mention that the proposed COLA is the community college COLA, not the higher COLA. CCs are guaranteed in state law. Yeah, so Andrew, the difference here is under K-12, categoricals got the 1.5. K-12 got the 3 point whatever percent, based on Prop 98. So technically it wasn't a college versus K-12 thing. It was a Prop 98 versus categorical situation. So a lot of categoricals under CDE, under K-12, like JL Ed and a bunch of other programs, including adult ed, got the 1.5% increase. So we don't want to say, oh, because the chancellor's office is the fiscal agent for this, we got less money. No, it would have happened regardless if it was CDE or the chancellor's office. So let's see. And Kristen says, were there guidelines that were changed in 2020 due to COVID that are now in place once more in terms of this process? No, it's the same process. We haven't really changed anything. So other than, classroom instruction and remote testing, those kind of things. But as far as the fiscal process, we haven't changed anything, just because the sensitivity of the deadlines. And if we delay on our deadlines or push them back or give you more time, then that means the funding gets released later. And we've already had problems with funding going out like in December and January when it should go out in August. So we want to avoid that this year. We want to keep to tight timeframes. I know people are looking at options, alternatives to how to speed up that process. In fact, we have a meeting sometime this month with all the state agencies to talk about that, including finance. And so we're trying to get that money out to you as soon as possible. And so we know that this time, especially with COVID and all things going on, we don't want to delay funding and have teachers not get paid and programs not running. So, okay, I think we're caught up on the questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a couple of other items I just want to introduce. I always like stirring the pot. So a few things will coming out probably in July, maybe June or July of this year. First, we'll have a member effectiveness reminder. We'll be restating the guidance on member effectiveness. And so what that means is we'll be setting up processes that we're tracking deliverables based on those, I think it's 21 assurances. When you certify that CFAD, you're certifying to those assurances that you will hold public meetings, that you will have decision-making that follows ed code, and you'll be submitting reporting deliverables as mandated as a receipt of funds. And so we'll be tracking that. And so if someone will first, we'll send kind of like a reminder, and this is TAP's going to help us out quite a bit with this. So there'll be reminders, and then there'll be an outreach for technical assistance to the consortia director. And then if that fails, then it'll be a referral to the state. And then the state will be in contact with that particular member district or consortia. And if that fails, then the member will be declared an ineffective member, and the consortia can reduce their funding. And so we would encourage, the memo will state, we would encourage that consortia have bylaws about member effectiveness and things like that, and how you're going about keeping members accountable for the assurances for CAEP member effectiveness. And this is only a minimum threshold. So this is the bottom threshold. I know consortia are having discussions about what does member effectiveness mean. I know yesterday at the CAEP conference, we had a real good discussion about how Los Angeles went through the member effectiveness discussion and looking at all the metrics. So that's a discussion that we're still encouraging people to have, but this memo will be kind of minimum threshold guidance and what the process is at a minimum. Consortia can take this to the next level, and that'll segue into the 3-year planning process. So we'll also release guidance later this spring, summer on the next 3-year planning process. And so what we're going to try to do is align our 3-year planning process with NOVA. And so that you don't have to have a separate document and then put something in NOVA that doesn't align with it. So your 3-year plan will be put into NOVA. It'll align with your annual plan, which will align with your work plan, which will align with your budget. And so you only have to put this stuff in once. And so if you're putting in, oops, I think we lost it. Yeah, thank you. You only have to put it in once. And then when you do your annual planning, you're just updating what's already in the system. So we're trying to make this easier for you. We will give you the ability to download whatever information you put in your 3-year plan, because we know some of you like to create a local 3-year plan document for your local boards, your stakeholders, things like that, your school boards. And so we'll give you the flexibility to take that out of the NOVA system, put graphs and pictures and things like that, and if you wish. But all you're required to do is complete the prompts in NOVA. And so more to come on that, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then also, it'll probably be in 2022, but we will formalize the governance certification process. Right now, there was a document back in like 2015, 16 that we had everybody fill out, and it got buried in the document box. And some consortia do an annual review of their governance, and some don't. And so what we'll be putting into the NOVA system is we'll probably be adding a couple of questions to the existing governance document that you submitted a while ago. And then those will probably cover member effectiveness and carryover. And then you'll have to certify that annually as part of we're thinking part of the CFAD process. So when you certify your allocations, you'll also be certifying your governance. And so that'll go through kind of the similar process. So more to follow on that. And then we're also going to be working with certain consortia to do targeted technical assistance and help them align their professional development and connect with their long-term planning. And so more to come on that later this spring. So a lot of good stuff coming out. I'll see if I missed any questions here. Let's see. So, okay, Sally says, when you release the allocation, you show 2 fiscal years. Are we supposed to make decisions on the second out year based on CAEP info? I believe the numbers for the second year is, yes, that's correct, Sally. So by statute, we're supposed to put out a 2-year preliminary allocations. We don't have any information to say that that second year is solid, but what we do is just repeat the first year, but that gives you an idea of, but that said, we have had cases where we got less in the second year when it actually came the following year. So that is just covering statute. It's just an estimate. It's not a firm number. The firm number is even the initial year, the 21-22 number is somewhat firm, but the May revise could change all that. So this at least gets you going on the planning, and then we revise it from there. So hopefully that helps. It's not a vote of confidence there, but we don't want to wait around till the budget's signed to start moving things forward. And then Kirsten says, is there a plan to disseminate standard guidance around carryover exception for consortium members? At the local level, we would like to implement clearer guidance on this. At the state level, there seems to be a soft guidance on 50% threshold, but nothing hard and fast. Please let us know if there's expected guidance on this. Will this be included in the memo? So carryover is still being discussed at the state level. There might be trailer bill legislation on this. So we will see what the next 3 or 4 months, what happens. And so based on that process of budget hearings and trailer bill language and other bills and things like that, we'll see if carryover is solidified. We do have guidance, and there's the standard 30 months, and we'll go over that today as part of the 3-year, 1 year to allocate, 3 years to spend. That's the standard. And then we have a 2-year window period to spend that in, and then we give you extra 6 months, but we'll go over that today. But there could be some movement on carryover. So Wendy asks, member effectiveness, wouldn't the first step be to try to help the member be effective? Yes, so that's the first process would be reminders, and then the second process would be reach out to that member for technical assistance, or reach out to the consortia lead or director to see if they need technical assistance. So there's a logical progression that we're going to go through in this process. It won't be like, oh, you missed a date by 2 days and now you're ineffective. No, there's a long drawn out process that gets us to the ineffective member. And there's, according to the Ed Code, there has to be a reasonable intervention. And so we'll be working with the consortia on that reasonable intervention, offering technical assistance. And so remember, this is a minimum threshold. So, okay, and let's see. I may have missed the timeline for reminders about member effectiveness. When is this going to be released? It'll probably be go into effect in July 1st. It'll probably be released later this spring, and we'll be doing a webinar on it to explain the process. All right, and Wendy says, will governance certification require adoption by governing boards of the member institutions? And so as far as governing boards, you mean the consortia? So yeah, it would have to be certified by the consortia. And so in the Ed Code, those member reps have the ability to make those decisions for their representative district. So it doesn't have to go back to another governing board. So whatever your consortia bylaws are and your rulemaking or your decision-making process, that's up to the members, the member reps of the consortia to decide on and certify. So we'll have more information on that as that process gets formalized later this spring. And then Sherry says, legislation says no member shall receive less than they did prior year. What do you suggest with the following? All of the members are timely with reports and attend meetings as required, so they are not technically ineffective. However, their enrollment has dropped and they have provided a corrective action plan, but they continue to have low enrollment. How can we take a portion of their funds from them? So that would be you would have to have your own bylaw. And that's a little tricky because everybody has different situations with how they run their programs. They might be in a rural area. There might be some issue why students aren't getting there. So that's why the minimum threshold, we're looking at member effectiveness as far as these items that, as far as deliverables that they're certifying to, until we perfect the data collection process, because right now our data collection has a few bugs that we're working on, but once we get there, And part of the 3-year planning process will also have goal setting, and targets, which I forgot to mention. And so that will be a way for them to track enrollment and things like that, depending on what they're going to be focusing on for their 3-year planning, the goal setting and the targets. So it's baby steps. We can't take an automatic leap to start cutting people's funding because of low enrollment, not factoring into all those things that go into that situation. So, but local consortia can pass their own bylaws about that. But yeah, you're kind of hamstrung by the current ed code about prior year, unless you're an ineffective member. So that's why we're going to include member effectiveness and carryover into the governance document. Tim says, is there anything in the governor's proposal to address the potential spike in adult ed enrollment due to the increase in non-grads? Is there? No, nothing in there. It's our standard allocation, no extra requirements. Right, so Wendy, the consortia reps are the designated reps. It doesn't have to go back to the school district or board of trustees or anything like that. It's the consortia reps. Okay, so I think we're caught up. And next slide, please. Sorry, I'm going to go quickly because I really want to get to Veronica. So as you know, CAEP expenditures requirements. So NOVA is our system. For those of you who are not familiar with NOVA, it's our fiscal reporting system and our planning system. And so the way the CAEP planning process works, we have 3-year plans that give us kind of a visionary, overarching vision of where we want to go by each consortia. And then every year it's updated through the annual plans. So that 3-year plan provides a vision. The annual plan is kind of what you're going to do this year. And then each member develops their own work plan and budget based on those annual plans. And so that's the planning process. Now the fiscal process is those work plans and budgets, of course, but every quarter you're reporting on your expenses from those work plans and budgets from the planning process. So our current NOVA cycle right now is 18-19. We're closing out. 19-20 funds are active until 12/31/21, and 2021 funds are active until 12/31/22. And so I'm going to go into a little more detail in that. Next slide, please. So speaking of those funds and the closeout process, so I'm going to break down the 36-month cycle of our CAEP funds. And I'll do this using the 18-19 funds. So the 18-19 funds were allocated July 1st, 2018. CAEP members had until June 30th, 2020, that's 2 years, to spend those funds. And so in order to carry over those funds into year 3, beginning July 1, 2020, members had to complete a corrective action plan in NOVA. So with that corrective action plan, they were allowed an extra 6 months, bringing us up to 12/31/20. So there's the 30-month cycle right there. It's, guidance is 24 months to spend. With the corrective action plan, you get another 6 months. That's 30 months. So let's go to the closeout process. Next slide, please. And so we're at 30 months. So then the closeout process begins on January 1st, 2021. And so members must enter 18-19 closeout information or numbers along with their Q2 expenditure information into NOVA by March 1st. That's coming up. And this is what Veronica is going to go into detail with the demo. Consortia directors will certify Q2 and close out those 18-19 funds by March 31st, 2021. Next slide, please. So if you are returning CAEP funds, which has rarely happened, I think we've only had maybe in the last 5 years, 2 districts return funds out of 5 years, and 450 members times 5, that's pretty good. So if you are returning funds, what'll happen in April, the CAEP office will invoice any members that are returning 18-19 funds, and these funds go back to the state general fund. They don't go back to the consortia. They don't go back to the CDE or the Chancellor's office for reallocation. They have to go back to the general fund, and we lose out on those funds. That's why it's important to have those bylaws on carryover and tracking this so you don't revert any funds to the state general fund, because everybody loses on that. The students don't get those resources, the consortium doesn't, the member doesn't. So if this is the case, in May, those members will remit funds to the state, and then in June, the state controller's office or state chancellor's office, sorry, and CDE will close out the books on 18-19. So that's where we get to that 36-month cycle. So 30 months to spend, which includes 6 months of corrective action, and then 6 months to close out. So, and then here's a few, yeah, we can go to the next slide. Couple of frequently asked questions I'll quickly go through. I want to give Veronica time. So question, my member needs more time to finalize their closeout report in NOVA. What do I do? So the consortium really has until March 31st to certify Q2 and closeouts. And so the consortium can work with members to provide them additional time and allow for consortium review and certification by that March 31st deadline. So if March 1st is going to be difficult, work with your consortia director. You have as a consortium until March 31st. Okay, next slide, please. Question, my member accounting office asked if expenditure closeouts include encumbrances rather than expenditures. So answer, all CAEP activities related to 18-19 ended. So that was December 31st. That was of last year. Closeout report must include all confirmed expenditures. We cannot allow for open purchase order encumbrances for closeout certification. Please have them contact TAP if they have any questions. And so hopefully by March, you will know, what the true expenditure numbers are from your prior year and close out funds. And usually people have already spent their 18-19 funds. So we're only talking a handful of districts and maybe less than a couple of $1 million that maybe are in question when we get to the end of December with 18-19 funds. So we're not talking about a lot of funds. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me turn it over. I'll work the chat, and Veronica is going to take. Sorry, I was talking and I muted myself. So Veronica's going to take us through the demo, and I'm going to look at the chat and try to follow up any questions. So here's Veronica. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and share from NOVA. So everyone should see NOVA. It's currently loading. So hopefully this doesn't take too much time. Okay, here we are. So I've logged into NOVA and I am on, I clicked on CAEP as the program and am on consortia and members. So I'm going to go down to fiscal reporting. This is where we're going to look at the fiscal reports for Q2 and do a demonstration on closing Q2 out. And actually, I'm just going to randomly pick a consortia. So let's go with Butte Glen Adult Education. Most members are still in the processing phase and have not entered in their expenditures, and that's to be expected. As Neil mentioned, the member deadline is March 1st and the consortium deadline is March 31st. So within this window, the first thing that you want to make sure that you look at before you start entering data for the members is to make sure that the prior quarter's fiscal reports as well as the budget and work plan has been completed. If not, you'll have a red message here that says all fiscal reports and budget and work plans must be certified before you can submit this report. So if last quarter, there are some consortia and members who are still working on Q1, and we have notified each of those members and those consortia leads. So when another member comes into they could see that red message, and that would be in replace of this message here. So that's just something to point out as you go in to complete your fiscal reports. So I'm going to click on Butte Glen CCD. And they, of course, have submitted quarter 1. So as you can see here, are all of their expenditures for quarter 1. They did not have to complete a corrective action plan for their quarter 1 expenditures. And so we just see a summary of activities down here, and they have submitted, and it was certified last quarter. So now, because we know that NOVA is a cumulative system and that the quarter 1 expenditures will automatically transfer over to the quarter 2 expenditures. So as you can see, 833 instructional salaries for quarter 1 is what we see here in quarter 2. And the job is for the member to now add quarter 1 and quarter 2, because remember, the fiscal system is on, or fiscal reporting is on a cumulative basis. And in order to enter in expenditures and have them be captured and held, you cannot enter in expenditures that are less than what was entered in the prior quarter. So all of the expenditures for Butte Glen would have to be at the level that they were at in quarter 1 or above. So in theory, I'll have to raise this or keep it at $833. So I'm going to enter in just a few arbitrary numbers. This is just for demonstration purposes, and I'm in a safe environment, so I am not messing up any of their fiscal information. So for instructional salaries, we're going to just say that they had $1,833 for instructional salaries in quarter 2. And in for 2,000 non-instructional salaries, we're going to bring this up to 15,000. And then we're employee benefits. We are just going to bring this up to 5,000. And then I'm going to choose to keep the rest, 5,000, not 500. I'm going to keep the rest of their expenditures as is and just tab through. And then as you can see, now their expenditures are up to $22,785. Now, one thing to also look at as you are looking at your expenditures and entering them is what you projected for your forecast. So for Butte Glen CCD, they projected that they would have spent $625 or 25% of their object code for of their object code 1,000 for quarter 2. And so they are at, cumulatively, they are at 1,833. So in essence, they have spent 293% of what they projected they would spend here. And so as you're thinking about the forecast that you entered into your budget and work plan in relation to what you have entered in for expenditures, make sure that you're tracking how much you are forecasting and how much your expenditures are in correlation to your forecast, to make sure that you're either meeting those forecasts or you are exceeding those forecasts, because anything below 90% of that projected forecast will trigger a corrective action plan. And then the next item is $2,500 for their project budget. So for object code 1,000, their total project budget is $2,500. So if I scroll all the way over, we'll see the percent of overall budget that has been expended up through quarter 2. So again, this is all arbitrary, but in essence, they have spent 73% of their budget for this particular object code, and their budget remaining is $667. And so one thing to keep in mind, especially as Butte CCD move or anyone moves into quarter 3, is to keep in mind your budget remaining. So next quarter, you may have additional expenditures. Anything that goes above what you have remaining, we advise you to complete a budget revision so that you can hopefully re-examine your budget, and if needed, move monies around to make sure that you're able to cover your expenditures for each object code for the remainder of the program year. What we see from time to time is that some agencies, they will end up with a negative budget remaining for any object code, and then that negative number continues on throughout the rest of the program year and potentially into the next quarter. But we want to make sure that we catch it before it gets too far away from the allotted monies, because what we don't want to happen is at the end of a program year, this budget remaining for the overall budget is a negative number, which means moving into the next program year, you're going to start off with a bit of a deficit. And so NOVA's going to automatically subtract or deduct your annual allocation for the next program year to cover what you didn't have in the prior program year. So these are all just negative information of things that we look at when we're providing technical assistance, and what we will be continuing to look at more closely as we move further with attempting to help members, stay in compliance, complete their CAEP deliverables, et cetera. So I have entered in all of the expenditures for Q2. And again, looking at the percent, the forecast percent, and then where we are with the forecast, the budget, the project budget, how much of that budget has been spent, and then the budget remaining. So with that, a corrective action plan did appear for this member. And the corrective action plan appeared. Let's look at all of their expenditures, and it's looking like the corrective action plan appeared because of this object code. What is this? 3,000 for employee benefits. So I entered, remember, this is all arbitrary, it's all fake data, but I entered in 5,000, and they projected that they would have spent $6,136 or 25%, and they only expended 81% of their forecast. And so that prompted the corrective action plan. So the corrective action plan says, expenditures fall below target, please provide the action steps that will be taken to address this issue. And so here is where we would like you to clearly articulate exactly the action steps that will be taken to not have the corrective action plan appear, to correct this issue and then not have it appear in the next quarter. So you would enter in details on how you plan to address this issue. So I'm just going to put in, we'll fix next quarter, just to move us along. And then the summary of activities here, we're looking for you to articulate what happened in the quarter. So how you basically spent the money, or what you spent the money on. Any activities related to the expenditures that you have reported is where we would like you to place that information here. And we know that some consortia are not filling out the summary of activities. And so we are going to move forward and make this a required field, because when we're looking at member effectiveness and we're looking at all of the data we have available to us, we want to see what took place during that quarter. Of course, we know, what you spent your money on in terms of the object codes, but we really are looking for details to support how we are providing technical assistance to you regarding member effectiveness. So I'm just going to put provided 6 ESL classes to 1,000 students. Again, all fake data, just to move us along. So now that I've entered in this information, I move forward and I have my submit button, because I have entered in expenditures that were greater than what was reported in Q1. And I have submitted something for the corrective action plan. I've submitted something for the summary of activities, and now my submit button is here. But if you notice, you have a message here that does not normally appear, only during Q2 of each program year. It says all member agencies must submit their allocation year closeout reports for this quarter before they can be considered for certification. Once you select submit, you will be prompted to close out allocation year 2018-19. So this is preparing you to close out 2018-19 plus submit your quarterly report for program year 2021-2022. So I'm going to press submit here, and now it's asking, or it's telling me, this is to certify that the expenditures report has been prepared in accordance to applicable state regulations. To the best of my knowledge, the data contained in this report and declarations within the report are true and accurate. Any information that was reported is supported by documentation on file at the district/college. So this is an agreement for you. And so you would say agree and submit, and then the actual closeout window will appear. So here it's going to be telling you that according to the FIFO dashboard, which is what we use to, as you are submitting expenditures, your expenditures are being subtracted from your oldest monies first. So when it comes to 2018-19, all of the expenditures leading up to December 31st, 2020, if you had any 2018-19 funding still available to you, your expenditures were automatically being subtracted from the oldest monies first. And so it's saying that I have reviewed the fiscal reports for my agency and confirmed that all funds for this allocation year have been spent. So this is Nova's or the system's way of saying that the FIFO report has been reviewed. You do not have any remaining monies for 2018-19 and that you are certifying that. Now, if you did have monies from 2018-19 that you would be returning to the state, it would say, as indicated in the FIFO dashboard, your member agency expenditures within NOVA indicate that you have, and it will give you a dollar amount. Let's say you have $1,000 left for allocation year 2018-19, and then you have to check that you have reviewed the fiscal reports and that you understand you have $1,000 left and that you're going to be preparing an invoice, or the system, excuse me, the state and the system is going to prepare an invoice for you to return the $1,000 to the state. But here we're all good with 2018-19. All of the monies have been expended. And when you click submit, you're saying that you are closing out all budgets, work plans, and expenditure reporting for this allocation year and will not be able to make any modifications moving forward. So we're going to press submit here. And so now you have done two things. You have submitted your Q2 expenditure report, and then you've also closed out 2018-19. So I see that there are messages in the chat. So I'm going to go to the chat and review those. It looks like Neil may have answered them. Is there anything that I need to know, Neil?
No, you're good. You're caught up. So
okay.
Continue
okay,
on.
Okay, good. Thank you. So that's one demonstration that we wanted to take the opportunity to do this afternoon. And the second demonstration is the not fiscal reporting, the budget and work plan, but as it relates to the forecast expenditures, the percentages. So I'm going to go to consortia and members. And once it loads, I'm going to go to a consortium and I'm going to open up their budget and work plan. So I'm going to just go to, actually, I think, yeah, I'm going to go to Allen Hancock, and one of their budgets is in draft. So that's perfect. It's already opened, but this is a safe environment, so it doesn't matter. But I'm going to go to Allen Hancock Joint CCD. And I'm going to go to their work plan. So here, as everyone knows, the work plan is a direct import from direct import from the annual plan, where the strategies that were identified in the annual plan are automatically put into the work plan for your budget and work plan. And here, a member just checks which of the strategies they plan to address for the program year 2020-21. So here are all the strategies that Allen Hancock CCD plans to address. So we're going to go to the budget. And here they have completed their budget. So they have a total available funds of 1.7 million, and their total available funds are their annual allocation plus any carryover from prior years that are still available to them. And we see all of their indirect costs and their direct costs. So all of this is taken care of. Now we're going to scroll down to their quarterly expenditure report. And I think I may have done this when I created the screenshots in the PowerPoint. So the idea here is that we wanted to show you all that we provide these examples for you, and this is what we're moving towards, for you to use this as a minimum threshold. But again, that will be out in the official guidance. But one thing that we want to call to everyone's attention is that these percentages that you enter in for your quarterly expenditure forecast are cumulative percentages. So what we're saying is that, you know, Q1, they're saying that they would have expended 15%, or they're forecasting that they will expend at least 15% of their budget for this particular object code. Now in Q2, what we'd like to see is more than 15% will be expended. So here they have 15% again in Q3, and in Q4 they have 55%. However, Q2 and Q3 are not cumulative per se. And so we would advise that consortia examine the true expenditure forecast, or again, we're going to be advising that you use this example because this should be on a cumulative basis, and whatever you have forecast in quarter 4, whatever's remaining. So let's say in theory, each quarter they were on a cumulative basis, and when it got to quarter 4, they were at 55%. So they're saying that by quarter 4 for this particular object code, they would have expended 55% of the total budget, and they're planning to carry over 45%. Now, we know we have the conversation about the 15% carryover, but since that's not in effect at this moment, we're still going with whatever is put in the system with advisement to use this 15, 30, 45, and 60%. So how that looks is up here, quarter 1, 15% of the budget will be expended, or that's what they're forecasting. Quarter 2, 30%, quarter 3, 45%, quarter 4, 60%. So they're saying at the end of this program year for this object code, they will be carrying over 40% of this, of the budgeted amount for this object code. So again, we are strongly advising, it's not a mandate or anything as of right now, but we are strongly advising that you use this example and make sure that the forecasts are on a cumulative basis. And also, as you're moving along throughout the program year, revisit these forecasts, because what you put in, let's say in August or September, because these are due in October, what you put in at that time may have been realistic at that time, but as you move forward, things may change. So you want to make sure that you are constantly watching this. And for consortia leads, one thing that we are doing with the enhancements that we're going to be making in NOVA is that we're going to make these forecasts visible to you so that as you are reviewing your members' budget before you certify, you're able to see what they are putting in for their forecasts to make sure that their forecasts are first and foremost on a cumulative basis, but that hopefully they're using this example or they're using a realistic forecast, expenditure forecast. But that information currently is not available for you to view prior to certification, but it will become available for you to view. So those are the 2 areas that we are going to be, that we wanted to demonstrate this afternoon. So are there any questions?
Jody had a question. Do the forecasts translate to the FIFO table?
Do the forecast No, the forecasts are not part of the FIFO table. The forecasts are currently only used when they only appear or are being used when you do your fiscal reports. And you see the column that has the amount that you said, or the percentage that you said you would have expended, and then how much of that forecast you have actually expended based on your expenditures for the quarter.
So on that sliding table that I really struggle with understanding, where it has the different data points and you move it around, it has a forecast line. And I thought maybe it came from that forecast table from each member, but I guess not.
Well, so what that's from, so we have the allocation amount and then we have the expenditure amount. And so I'm just, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that number is the allocation amount that we gave to the members. And then the other line is the expenditure, what you've reported. So it shows kind of what funds are available, and that's the first in, first out. So the FIFO chart, I don't think they do a chart at the member level. I think that's only for, maybe it happens at the consortia level too, Jody, or is that just at the state level?
Yeah, it goes to the consortium level as well. So on that table or that chart, it's kind of got moving data points that you can slide up and down and look at what, and one of those lines is called the forecasts and one is called the expenditures. So I was kind of connecting the individual member forecasts are combined into the consortium forecast, and that's how to read that table. But
are you talking about here, Jody?
let me take a look. Yep, that's the one. So see how that blue line is the forecast line?
Uh-huh.
Is that the combined forecasts of the members? Or do those correlate at all? I could be like way.
Yeah, let me, let's
I really struggle with that table. I just not sure exactly what it's telling me.
Um, yeah, I don't think that this is a direct output from what, because this is at the member level. So I'm looking at an individual agency,
Okay.
and it looks like it continues to grow. Yeah, this isn't a direct output from the area that I was just demonstrating from, but we can definitely get clarification on exactly what this forecast line is used for.
Okay, that would be really helpful. And just understanding how to read the FIFO report, and even, you know, looking at each year. I could personally use some training on that. I don't know if anybody else does, but you know, I gotta
And I see Shannon
really
said that she-
analyze that every time.
Right. And so what we traditionally just use it for is we look at this table, and I think this is what Shannon is alluding to, is looking at the expenditure summary, because here is where we see kind of what the allocations were beginning with a particular program year, and then the allocations that have the expenditures, and then how much is remaining. So when we're looking at end of year or the expiration of a funding year, we're looking to see how much you have left in your, how much you have left of your allocations for a particular program year.
Right, right. And that's really clear. That section right there, that expenditure summary, it's just the other chart that I, you know, was trying to understand and really determine what that data can provide us.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Jody, what we'll do is we'll research this a little bit, and if there is some value to having like a webinar or doing like a training, we'll follow up with everyone, maybe through the newsletter or a direct message out to consortia directors or something like that.
What I think that top table or chart really shows us is a quarterly data, which would be really nice, rather than waiting toward the end of the year to find out, uh-oh, we've got a remaining balance here. So if you can track it a little bit more frequently, kind of gives you a little bit more trend data, I think.
Yeah. The only thing that Nova kind of, it's not a pet peeve, but if you have one ambitious member that's spending a lot faster than others, it kind of covers for those slower members, because then when you look at the chart, you think you're doing well, but it's just that one member spending all the money, and then the slower ones kind of get coverage from the ambitious member. That's why you have to go down to the individual member expenditure numbers to see who's really not spending. So that's why when I look at the FIFO chart at the state level, it shows everything spent. But then when you drill down to like the district level, you can say, oh, this person has 18-19 funds. It's being covered up because one of their members is spending their 2021 funds quicker, and that's covering for that, you know, carryover that they have. So you always have to drill down. We're trying to fix that a little bit to make it more clear that we can identify carryover issues at the local level, at the member district level. So more to follow on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that is all that I have. If there are no more questions, then I'll stop sharing in Nova.
Yeah, no questions in the chat. But I think, yeah, we'll follow up, Veronica, and see if there is some value in doing either a training or a webinar on the kind of the FIFO chart, and maybe how we could use that.
Yes.
Oh, and then, sorry, if you want to go over that last slide, since we only have a few minutes.
Okay, so this slide is just talking about upcoming events. So this spring, thus far, this is the webinars that we have scheduled. So we have one on February 24th is the ICANN webinar, and this is a webinar that will be hosted. It's out of the Chancellor's Office, and it's a new initiative / program to participate in a free online class. And I am not remembering exactly what the content is, but we just received the description, so we'll be opening registration for that webinar.
Yeah,
And
Veronica, that's COVID certification, kind of like the for retail and hospitality. It's kind of like food service, but it goes beyond that. It includes how to be COVID safe, and you get COVID safe certification. That includes a number of industries. So it's really intriguing. So that's a little background on that.
thank you. And in March, we'll move forward. We have done some research, which some of you all have been a part of. It's with High Road Alliance. And so they were looking at transition programs as well as immigrant integration. And so we're going to be releasing those research briefs, and then we'll have a webinar that will dive deeper, not only into the research briefs, but then also to showcase some of those programs that were a part of the research that had took place. And then we'll have CASAs with I3 reports again, and it's an additional webinar to the immigrant integration webinar. And then we will begin holding quarterly consortium director / lead work group meetings. And so we'll really start doing that in the springtime. It's another opportunity for consortium leads to come together and to work on different pieces of being a consortia lead. Right now, we are only bringing consortia leads and directors together during the directors event, but in our evaluations and feedback, we received a lot of feedback that said that there should be more opportunities for consortia leads and directors to come together and to not only network, but to work through some of the things that they do in their role. And then we'll be scheduling state priority webinars. So we have a series of state priorities, and we're going to be taking a deeper dive on some of the sessions that were presented at the summit that are around those state priorities. And then we'll start with the 3-year planning guidance webinars, because as you all know, we are preparing to submit the next 3-year plan in June 2022. So we want to make sure that we release a lot of training opportunities, or that we hold, a lot of training opportunities to prepare you to complete that 3-year plan. So these are just some of the events and webinars, et cetera, that we have coming up, but definitely a lot more to come. This is just a snapshot.
Yeah, I think we're out of time. We had a lot of activity in the chat at the last minute. So not able to keep up with it, but we can review it afterwards to see if there's any follow-up questions. But anyway, Veronica, if you want to wrap it up.
Okay, I couldn't find my mute button, but yes, thank you all very much for participating this afternoon. If there are any questions related to the expenditure reports, the forecast, and the budget and work plan, anything NOVA related and above and beyond, please feel free to reach out to TAP at tap@caladoed.org, or you can submit a support request on our website, and we would definitely be sure to help you in whatever way we can. Be on the lookout for upcoming professional learning opportunities via webinars. And then also, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, or maybe are not paying attention to the newsletter, that's kind of our first access point when it comes to releasing information to the field. So please pay attention to those. And then we also have a lot of information about what other leadership projects are doing. We showcase student success, et cetera. So please look out for information in the newsletter. And that is all that I have. Until next time. Thank you all very much for joining us. And thank you, Neil, for the presentation.
Hey, bye, everyone. Have a good weekend. Thanks,
Have a good
Veronica, Holly, Mandalee. See ya.